Week 15 of the 2025 fantasy football season is right around the corner. It is playoff time, and it is time to truly lock in. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way through Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the quarterbacks in each game, as well as where I believe the quarterbacks will finish by the end of the week. Before we can get into things, though, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Like, it owes you some money. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 15 quarterback start or sit decisions for the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Baker has been mid over the last two games. It has completely fallen off from that MVP run that he went on earlier on in the season. Quarterback 20 last week up against the Saints with 14 completions on 30 attempts for 122 yards and a touchdown, as well as one interception with 6 rushes for 42 yards. When these teams played back in week number 1, Baker was the quarterback number 12, so I'm hoping that he can channel some of the good old days from earlier on in the season this week in the 14th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis. With the Bucs' offensive weapons more healthy, I got him as a low-end quarterback 1, but if I'm being honest with you guys, I am definitely not as confident in Baker as I was just a couple of weeks ago. Now we move to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Cole's cash, Kirk Cousins, has been dreadful in terms of fantasy football. I don't even feel confident really rolling him out there in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues. Last week, he had 15 completions on 30 attempts for 162 yards and 2 interceptions as the quarterback 27. In 4 starts, he scored less than 8 points in half those games. So while the Bucs are the 4th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, I don't feel comfortable touching the guy with a 10-foot pole. Now we move to the 1 p.m. slated games on Sunday, the Cleveland Browns at the Chicago Bears. Now I will note that if this game does end up being -20 with wind chill, I would be very nervous to play either guy. Now, I'm already nervous to play one of the guys that I've listed as a start, and the other guy is a sit. So the Cleveland Browns at the Chicago Bears, the start of the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slate. Now, Caleb Williams has been all over the place this season. He could have a wet dream matchup and look like a blind man. He could face the best defense in the NFL and carve them up like the Thanksgiving turkey. Back-to-back games outside the top 12 for Caleb Williams. This week, he faced a Browns defense that recently has turned into a team that you can run a train on. So I would expect the Bears to attack them with the healthy dosage of DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, thus lessening the value of Caleb Williams. So in the 4th worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, with a guy in Caleb that I really just never trust, he is a sit to me. For Shedeur Sanders, he has been named the Browns starter for the remainder of the season by head coach Kevin Stefanski. Shedeur looked incredible, like a 20-piece McNugget at 3 a.m. after you're heavily intoxicated. 23 completions on 42 attempts for 364 yards and 3 touchdowns with 1 interception, as well as 3 rushes for 29 yards and another touchdown as the quarterback number 2. Now, it is entirely possible that this is one of those cases of, hey, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. A broken clock is right twice a day, and Shedeur Sanders completely regresses this week up against the Bears. But if the team truly embraces Sanders and actually lets him throw the ball more than 20 times like last week, we may see a huge finish for Shedeur at the end of this season. In the 8th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, I got him as a break glass in case of emergency quarterback 2 start in the quarterback 18 to 19 range. Now we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Lamar finally had a great game for the first time since week number 9 last week up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They still lost the game, but hey, at least Lamar finally fucking did something. And this is exactly what I said would happen last week. Once we start to give up on a guy like this, right? A guy that we know has the upside to go absolutely bananas, right? We finally kind of start to give up on him. Some people bench him, and he balls out. Quarterback 7 last week with 19 completions on 35 attempts for 219 yards and a touchdown with 1 interception, as well as 7 rushes for 43 yards and another touchdown. So while he shit the bed last time out up against the Bengals just a few weeks ago as the quarterback 27, in the second highest over-under set on the week, currently at 52, in the second best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, I think you gotta like Lamar as a top 6 quarterback this week. Now, since returning, Joe Joe Burrow has scored 19 plus points in back-to-back games and has been a top 11 quarterback in both games. Last week in Buffalo, in the snow, he was the quarterback 3 with 25 completions on 36 attempts for 284 yards and 4 touchdowns with 2 costly interceptions, which ultimately sold the team the game. Joe Burrow is on a heater, and I'll rank him accordingly. Against the Ravens just 2 weeks ago on Thanksgiving in his first game back, he was the quarterback 11. So here at minimum, in my opinion, he will be a top 12 quarterback, but in the 13th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, I got him as a top 4 quarterback on the week. Now we move to the LA Superchargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense struggled mightily up against the Texans on Sunday Night Football last week. 14 completions on 33 attempts for 160 yards and 3 interceptions with 7 rushes for 59 yards as the quarterback 22. Now the Texans defense is a brutal matchup, so him struggling, in my opinion, in that game should not be a surprise to anyone. So this week, while the Chargers are the second worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, I do expect Mahomes with his back against the wall to show up. In week number 1, he was the quarterback 6 up against the Chargers in Brazil. I understand that comparing week 1 now to week 15, things are very different. You know, maybe Mahomes has a much worse game. I'm not necessarily even expecting him to be the quarterback 6 this week. I got him as a low-end quarterback 1 on the week. Now, Justin Herbert, the pervert, looked like straight-up ass. Shout out to Kelsey Monroe on Monday Night Football up against the Eagles. 12 completions on 26 attempts for 139 yards and a touchdown, and 1 interception, as well as 10 rushes for 66 yards to the quarterback 17. Now, when I say he looked like straight-up ass, that's obviously more hyperbole, because while he looked terrible, Jalen Hurts was next level super mega ass. We're going to be talking about him later in that exact same game. So his hand was clearly bothering him all game long and could have resulted in the poor play, in my opinion. The Chiefs are the 20th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis. I feel like the team will lean heavily on the run in this game as long as they aren't getting plowed. Unlike in week 1, where the Chiefs defense got put in a body bag by Justin Herbert as the quarterback number 5. He is a sit for me. Now, if you're in a super flex or a 2 quarterback league, I definitely think he's an acceptable start. He's close to being a start, but for me, I don't know, something just feels wrong with starting Justin Herbert here. Then we got the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. Now, Josh Allen looked at his best this season last week up against the Bengals. Nothing better than a good old shootout in the snow between Josh Allen and Joe Shiesty. 22 completions on 28 attempts for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as 9 rushes for 78 yards and another touchdown as the quarterback won. Another one. Shout out to DJ Khaled. This week, I expect another high-scoring affair in a game that has a 49.5 point total on the week. Josh was the quarterback 12 up against the Patriots back in week number 5. In the 18th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, I got Josh as my quarterback 1 on the week. Now, Draco May, the Iceman, is on a hot streak over his last 4 games. Top 12 quarterback in all games, quarterback 10. Last time out up against the Giants before the bye week. 24 completions on 31 attempts for 282 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 6 rushes for 12 yards. Last time up against the Buffalo Bills, he didn't fare very well at all. He was the quarterback number 25, and even in the 5th worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis here, again, I expect this game to be high scoring. May has huge upside, and he is far too consistent, in my opinion, to rank him outside of the top 5. Now we move to the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the New York Football Giants. Now, Jaden Stormy Daniels' return last week was short-lived as he got hurt in the 3rd quarter trying to make a tackle after an interception while the Commanders were getting plowed out by the Vikings. He hurt his left elbow. Absolutely zero reason for Jaden Daniels to return again. Just like I said, there was absolutely zero reason for him to return last week. Jaden Daniels is your franchise quarterback. Jaden Daniels does not need to go out there and return from injury quickly and get hurt again for a team that cannot make the playoffs. If they were in the playoff push, I get it, but it made no sense to go out there and sacrifice your body up against the fucking Minnesota Vikings for nothing. Now, Mariota has been very reliable this season when he has started. Now, he isn't always a top 12 quarterback, but he should at least be a middling to high-end quarterback too. So in the third best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, I got him as a high-end quarterback too this week. Now, Jackson Dart performed below expectations in his return game before the bye up against the Patriots in Foxborough. 17 completions on 24 attempts for 139 yards and a touchdown, as well as 4 rushes for 20 yards as the quarterback 21. Earlier on in the season, he was basically a locked and loaded top 12 quarterback when healthy. In the 6th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, I do expect Jackson Dart to get back to his old ways and to put up a very respectable showing. I got him as a mid-range quarterback 1 this week. Now we move to the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. But before we break down this game in depth at the quarterback position, as well as the rest of the games on the Week 15 slate, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 on the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. You might be like, Nick, how does the pick'em work on Underdog? It's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, back to the Raiders at the Eagles. Now, Jalen Hurts looked so fucking horrific on Monday Night Football that it was genuinely shocking. It was shocking that he played that bad. It's almost impossible to turn the ball over twice on the same play, and he did that. Now, I get we can clown on the play calling from Kevin Patullo, but holy hell, was Jalen Hurts giving the guy no favors, right? He gave him nothing. 21 completions on 40 attempts for 240 yards and 4 interceptions, 4 rushes for 8 yards as the quarterback 28. The likelihood of things being that bad again, though, would be low, as the offense hasn't looked great for like 5 straight games at this point, and he has been at least okay in the other games. So in the 15th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, maybe the positivity bunny will help them out. I assume they got that shit right out the locker room. I think Hurts will bounce back as a mid-range quarterback number 1. Now, Geno Smith hurt his shoulder in Sunday's game and is uncertain to play in this game. Whether he plays or not, though, you are never going to play him. Same thing is the case with small hands Kenny Pickett, who will take the reins in his absence. I actually think Kenny Pickett might be better than Geno Smith, but regardless, even in the 19th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, you are not going to be playing either Raiders quarterback. Now we move to the New York Football Giants. And that's a lie. It's the New York Jumbo Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval. Now, Trevor Lawrence continues to play quite well week in and week out. 19 plus points in 3 straight games. Last week up against the Colts, he was the quarterback 13 with 17 completions on 30 attempts for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns with 4 rushes for 16 yards. The Jets are the 16th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis. So regardless of how much I like to make fun of Trevor Lawrence, the production speaks for itself. I got him as a low-end quarterback 1 this week. Now, the Jets quarterback situation is up in the air as I'm recording today's video. My assumption is that Tyrod will not start as he got injured on the first offensive snap for the Jets last week and did not return with the groin. Brady Cook came in and didn't look really all that good at all, but you can't really blame the undrafted free agent for looking like shit after getting thrusted into a game with the situation being what it is, with the red-hot Dolphins defense. Justin Fields could play, but is dealing with injury as well. Regardless of who ends up, lining up as the quarterback 1 this week, there is really zero reason to roll the dice on any of these guys. Even if I think Justin Fields has high upside based on his rushing ability, why even bother, right? Why even bother risking your fantasy playoff matchup on Justin Fields, right? Now we got the Arizona Cardinals at the Houston Texans. Now CJ Stroud just hasn't been a good fantasy quarterback this season, and there really is no argument you can make against that. He has been a top 12 quarterback just 2 times out of 10 games. The offensive line continues to be bad, and I just would prefer to leave him on my bench in the 21st best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis. Now, the Texans are the worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, so if there ever was going to be a game that was going to end Jacoby Brissett's top 12 quarterback streak, it would be this week. He has been a top 12 quarterback in all 8 starts for Arizona. You could honestly say that he has been the most consistent quarterback in fantasy football this season. I understand he hasn't played every single game, and maybe if he played all, 13 games up to this point, maybe he would have had a stumble, a bumble, right? A bad game. But, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. We don't know, right? He's been a top 12 quarterback in all 8 starts. Last week, in a blowout loss up against the Rams, he has 25 completions on 44 attempts for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns, with 1 interception as well as 4 rushes for 22 yards as the quarterback 12. I normally rank him as a locked and loaded top 12 option because we always say this, if it ain't broke, you don't got to fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But this matchup has me nauseous, sick to my core. I got him as a lower end start in the quarterback 16 to 19 range. Now we move to the 4 p.m. slated games, the Green Bay Packers at the Denver Broncos. This one kicks off at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now Jordan, love me tender, love me sweet, has been cooking with fire over the last 2 weeks. Some real Americans top chef level showings out here. This dude is on some Gordon Ramsay level run. 7 touchdowns over the last 2 games with just 1 interception, with 20 plus points in each game. Last week against the Bears, he was the quarterback 11 with 17 completions on 25 attempts for 234 yards and 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. The biggest problem is, as I say every week, this is a team that does not need Jordan Love to put the cape on like he did in the last 2 games, and they don't need him to go bananas for them to win a game, right? They have a great defense. They can spam the run with Josh Jacobs and get out of there with, Jordan Love being pretty mad, scoring like 12 fantasy points. In the 6th worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, in a 43.5 point total game, he's a lower end start in the quarterback 16 to 19 range. I don't really trust him, but you may have to play him. Bo Nix is in the exact same range as Jordan Love. 5 straight games outside the top 12 at the quarterback position. Back-to-back games as a top 15 quarterback, though. I just don't really see a path to a big game here. Feels like yet another showing in the quarterback 16 to 18 range in the 7th worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis. Now we move to the Detroit Lions at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, ever since Dan Campbell took over the play calling, Jared Goff has turned into a completely different beast. Prior to the play calling change, Goff was a guy that was a super uninspiring quarterback to start, whereas since then, he has been a top 12 quarterback in 3 of 5 games. Last week wasn't one of those top 12 games, but he did look fine as the quarterback 14 up against Dallas, going 25 completions on 34 attempts for 309 yards and a touchdown. The Rams defense is a far from ideal matchup though, but in a double revenge game for Goff and Stafford in the 23rd best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, I got Goff as a low end quarterback one. Since this game has an over under of 55.5 points, this will be a banger, and I know bangers. After a disaster class in week 13 up against the Panthers in Carolina, in which Matthew Stafford threw 2 interceptions, which I know, throwing 2 interceptions, that's not that crazy for an NFL quarterback. It happens sometimes. But it's crazy for him. Why, you might ask? Because before that game, that is the same amount of interceptions that he threw total on the season, right? He has 4 interceptions, 2 of which he threw back in September. He bounced back in a big way. He had the Cardinals defense begging for mercy, 22 completions on 31 attempts for 281 yards and 3 touchdowns on the 5th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis. I expect Stafford to put belt to ass as a top 3 quarterback on the week. Now we move to the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. Now Tyler Shuck has been a top 12 quarterback in back-to-back games and has proven to me that Shuck may actually be a good enough NFL quarterback to actually be a starter. 13 completions on 20 attempts for 144 yards against the Bucs in Tampa, with 7 rushes for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, the Panthers defense is a tough task. We just saw them turn Matthew Stafford into a interception machine 2 weeks ago. So while I am excited about Shuck moving forward, this week he is a low-end start at best in the quarterback 2 range. In the 11th worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, it is important to note that he was the quarterback 12 last time out up against the Panthers a few weeks ago. So the upside is still there. Bryce Young has been so hit or miss this season. 1 week, you may think the guy is back, and then he follows that up by looking like a two-pack of ass. A great example of that is week 11 and week 12. In week 11, he is the quarterback 2. He drops 31.8 fantasy points down the throat of the Atlanta Falcons. He follows that up as the quarterback 21, scoring 10.3 fantasy points. The game prior to the bye, he rises again as the quarterback 4 with 15 completions on 20 attempts for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as 5 rushes for 23 yards. I get he could play well this week in the 24th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, but we saw this guy put up just 2.6 fantasy points up against this defense a few weeks ago. I would sit him. Now we move to the Tennessee Titans at the San Francisco 49ers. Now, despite Cam Ward throwing 2 touchdowns last week for the first time ever this season, he only scored 12.1 fantasy points, 14 completions on 28 attempts for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception in Cleveland, as well as 2 rushes for 4 yards. This season has just been a lost one for Cam Ward. No reason to ever believe in him, even in the 12th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis up against the Niners. Now, Brock Purdy is the poster boy of being a low-end quarterback 1. Not a guy that you're ever super ecstatic about being in your lineup, right? Not a guy that you go to sleep thinking about, oh man, look what Brock Purdy's going to do for my fantasy team. But ultimately, he should just finish as a top 12 quarterback. Last week, the team was on bye, so his last action was in week 13 at Cleveland. 16 completions on 29 attempts for 168 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 rushes for 4 yards and a touchdown as the quarterback 16. This week in the 9th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis that just had Shedeur Sanders, but fuck them, I got Big Cock Brock as a low-end quarterback 1. Now we move to the, this is our Colts, this is our team, we bleed blue, this is our Colts, whether win or lose, we love them. Going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Now, Sam Darnold has been all over the place since the bye week. Quarterback 5, 26, 25, 11, 30, and quarterback 4 last week in Atlanta. 20 completions on 30 attempts for 249 yards and 3 touchdowns with 1 interception, as well as 3 rushes for 23 yards. This game likely won't be super competitive, so I don't think he'll be throwing a ton. Darnold is a fringe start at best this week in the quarterback 2 range that I would prefer not to start even in the 17th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis. Now, for the Colts, I think it's going to be Phillip Rivers this week. Riley Leonard was jolted into play after Daniel Jones tore his Achilles. Leonard came in and was pretty mad. Quarterback 21 in Duval with 18 completions on 29 attempts for 145 yards and an interception, as well as 2 rushes for 5 yards and a touchdown. He is considered as week to week with the knee ligament strain, and I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but when you say week to week, typically that doesn't mean, the guy's going to play on Sunday. I would assume he's going to be out. So we'll see either old man Phillip Rivers or Brett Rypien. Brett Rypien, grip it and ripping it. Regardless of who starts, there's 0% chance I'm playing them up against the Seattle Seahawks defense that is fantastic in the 22nd best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis. I assume, though, Unc Rivers ain't coming out of retirement just to sit on the bench, so I assume he will be the starter. Now we move to the cold like Minnesota Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys on "Cause you waited all day for Sunday night." Now, since coming out the bye week over the last 4 games, Dak Prescott has been on a heater. Top 9 quarterback in all 4 showings and has been a top 3 quarterback in 2 of 4 games. Quarterback 9 last week in Detroit on Thursday Night Football. Shout out to 9, JJ McCarthy. 31 completions on 47 attempts for 376 yards and a tug with 2 interceptions, as well as 3 rushes for 14 yards. Whether CeeDee Lamb is active or not, even in the 3rd worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, you're just going to keep rocking with the guy who is on fire. I got him as a mid-range quarterback 1. Now, JJ McCarthy looked great on Sunday up against the Commanders. Quarterback 10 with 16 completions on 23 attempts for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as 6 rushes for 19 yards. 619 Rey Mysterio in a 31-0 victory. We have seen JJ McCarthy. He's another one of these guys that's just all over the place. No consistency. So even in the best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, I am not betting my fucking playoff chances on this bastard, who I know, even in this great spot, could end up shitting the bed. Now we move to the final game, Monday Night Football, the Miami Dolphins at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tua, turn of the ball over, did not live up to his nickname last week as he did not throw an interception, even though it seemed like he was trying to. The Dolphins are now an offense that just wants to spam run the ball and play great defense. And only make Tua throw the ball when they truly have to. This has been very clear over the 4-game win streak, as he has thrown 21, 20, 23, and 21 times in those games. He hasn't been a top 12 quarterback since week number 8, where he had one eye up against the Atlanta Falcons. Even in the 7th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, there is zero need to play him, especially since it's going to be cold as fuck and potentially snow. Now, every few weeks, Aaron Rodgers hops in the DeLorean and turns into prime Aaron Rodgers. That was very evident last week up against the Ravens in Baltimore. He looked like himself, even hit the discount double check emote. 23 of 34 passing for 284 yards and a score, as well as 2 rushes for a touchdown as the quarterback number 8. I expect him to regress again this week, as he has done after every single big game this season, especially with how the Dolphins defense has looked recently. So even in the 11th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, I'm leaving Mr. Discount double check on my bench. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button down below. Like, it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video. It'd help me out a ton. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you have not seen them already. Love you guys long time. Hope you have a great one. As always, good boy.